Hi, everybody. I'm Meredith Goldstein of the Boston Globe's Love Letters advice column and podcast. And this is another installment of Taking Care, a series where I'm talking to mental health professionals about getting through this scary and very challenging time. I'm very excited about today because we're talking to Joy Allen, who's been Berklee College of Music's chair of the music therapy department since 2016. And she's a clinician, supervisor, researcher, teacher, administrator, and she's really focused on how music can help people with chronic illnesses, including cancer. And, I was raised, mostly by a single parent mother piano teacher who went to Juilliard, who died in 2013. And my father, who also went to Juilliard and then left music, has beautifully pulled out his saxophone during this time. He's in his 70s now. And I have found myself turning to music in a way that I haven't in a while, just for a lot of good therapy. So I wanted to know more about what that meant, how we can soothe ourselves with our playlists. And I was really excited because when we put out the RSVP for this, a lot of people signed up and a lot of people had really, really, really good music questions. So Joy, thanks for coming today. And can you start just by telling us a little bit about the program, about what you do? And for those who don't know much about music therapy, can you explain it to us?
Sure. So thank you for having me and welcome everybody on another rainy Thursday. And I'm excited to be here. So like Meredith said, I'm Joy Allen. I do chair Berklee's music therapy department, as well as currently oversee our new Music and Health Institute, which we're really excited about. And, I will tell you that I think the thing that I'm very fortunate about is I have a job that I love. And it's because all of us connect to music in some way. And that's what we use as music therapists, is that those different connections within music and how we can use those connections to help people. So for example, if you think about in your own lives and your own role relationships with music from the time that you were little, and it might have been, your earliest memories might be, alphabet songs, A, B, C, D, Itsy Bitsy Spider, whether you're working on motor skills or learning academic concepts, but also there's connections with other people, the social songs that we have. And so if you start thinking about, everyone just take a moment and think about your own connection with music as through your life. What it served when you were little, up into elementary school, and if you were in a band or a choir, and those social connections that it served, or maybe it was, again, those opportunities that remind you of memories with your family or your loved ones, and through adolescence. And I think all of us can think about a song that we associate with a breakup, or if it's a song that reminds us of our first concert experience, or a song that was the one song that in life that you just connected with. Moving into adulthood and sharing memories with other people, and how we connect with it. So as music therapists, we're using different ways, whether it's physical and the rhythm qualities of music to help with Parkinson patients, whether it's emotional content, if it's memory, it's social. And we're fortunate enough that we can use those connections and use it as a way to meet the immediate needs of a patient, whether it's emotional need, physical need, social need, spiritual need, whatever it is. So as music therapists, we work with premature babies all the way up to older adults and end of life and everything in between, from autism, from medical to intellectual disabilities to hospice to everything in between. And here in Boston, in many of the medical centers, Spalding, Mass Gen, Children's Hospital, Dana-Farber, Jimmy Fund, they all have music therapists there, as well as several of the school systems and community centers, South Shore Conservatory, Brookline Music School. So there's different ways that they're using it. And again, it's really using music to have health-related outcomes, in a nutshell. And at Berklee, at Berklee, the program's been in existence since the early 90s, but music therapy it's existed since the beginning of time and how we therapeutically use it. But it got its real starts here in the United States, actually during World War I and World War II, when nurses started seeing the therapeutic benefits of music with soldiers who were injured on the field, and they didn't have pain control, and they were trying to take and divert their attention. So it was nurses who actually began using music on the battlefields and post-war. And then as veterans were transitioning back into civilian life or through rehabilitation from war injuries. So
I love nurses.
They are. They're heroes.
It's like every medical problem I faced in my life, it's like you turn to the nurse and the nurse is, So I have 1,000 questions for you, but I want to remind people that even if you didn't submit a question ahead of time, you can on the bottom where it says Q&A. I'm going to get to everybody's questions in a second, but you and I talked about hospitals in general, and when we were preparing for this, and I was mentioning Grey's Anatomy about how, you know, my exposure to medicine, besides families members with illnesses and myself, is watching it on TV, like most of us. And there's always this like incredibly cinematic, let's all just have a dance break. And what you had said to me was that this is actually something that is essential for essential workers right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we'll see, you'll see in different settings right now, people call them different things. Take 5 motivational moments, whatever it is, just to have a moment to decompress, because it's intense. And what's going on is really intense, and being able to even switch it and take a moment and say, okay, let me take a break from that. I have 5 minutes, let's do something. So anything from what we're seeing with some of the music therapists who are still in the medical settings right now on the daily floors is anything from 5 minutes for just having a dance party, 5 minutes for singing a song together, 5 minutes we're sharing, you know, different playlists, and we're seeing unit playlists. We're seeing people saying, hey, do you hear this song? Let's just all, you know, your turn, first song that comes to your head. We're also seeing a lot of individuals putting together montages and video clips so that you get to see a different way of interacting and being. But then we're also seeing people sharing, you know, how can I connect with my patient, with their family who's not able to be here? Is there a way that we can use the music to do that? So it's those take 5s that we're kind of taking to keep up that motivation, but also to acknowledge, you know, this sucks. This is not ideal, and it's okay. Like so many times we're thinking, you know, let's just keep going. But sometimes in order to keep going, we have to take a breath and say, it sucks. So let's have that moment of it sucks so that we can change the narrative and disrupt that narrative into, okay, but I can keep going. And we can use music to do that.
The narrative piece of it interests me because, you know, there are a lot of people who are posting, and musicians posting, very beautiful, soothing music. And I find personally that I get like sad, where I don't want that. And what I want right now, very specifically, is the new Fiona Apple album.
Yeah, it's great.
Separately though, I want Richard Marx. I want songs that I used to listen to with my sister in the 80s. Like I want upbeat things that have nothing to do with soothing me at all. And so like what is this just like an individual thing, or is there something to the nostalgia of it, or is it the rhythm of it? Like I would much rather listen to something incredibly upbeat or jarring right now than something peaceful and like that's like a bomb.
And there is absolutely a science to that. And so what we think about so often, and it's one of my big little pet peeves, is someone says, okay, you're irritated, so go put on this nice, relaxing Pachelbel's Canning with Waves. I'm going to jump out of my skin with that. And it has to do with literally, sorry, Pachelbel. Anyone who loves Pachelbel, sorry about that. But just being real. But it has to do, if you think about it, right? It's what we call the ISO principle. It's matching where you are. And so it's that validation that you need. And you and I talked about, like, when I'm really stressed and agitated, I need something that is rhythmically going to match my agitation in my body, but also really validate. And you and I talked about Linkin Park. Like, to me, that is my go-to in the end, and numb. And just, there's something about, I have to start there and then I can bring myself down. And so there's that part with the ISO principle. It's where you're matching where you are mood and motor wise. So even though I might not be running really, really fast, it's like you can feel the agitation in your body and you have to take it down. And it's what we do. Like if I'm working with a pain patient, I'm matching where their pain is, or their heart rate and their respiratory rate, and then you can bring it down, but you got to match it first. And so the one aspect of, what I'm listening to is, this is what I want, is you have the part where whatever that feeling or that you can't describe, you got to get it matched and come down. So that's one aspect. And then the other thing that we have is that when we are feeling not safe, or we're feeling really stressed, is we want familiarity and comfort. So you're going to go back to familiarity and comfort. So if you think about, some of the things you're listening to, there's something about that time period that's reminding you of that was comforting to you.
Richard Marx and his
comforting to
hair,
you.
his voice.
I can't remember the one song with the, what was his one big song?
Well, there was like Right Here Waiting.
Yeah, Right Here Waiting for You. Yes.
Yeah, right. And like all of these, and I think it reminds me of a hopeful time because I would have been more of like teenage years. And
yeah.
I was like, one day I'm going to make out with a boy who has Richard Marx hair. And like the hopefulness of it, right? So I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. And that's what we need, because at the end of the day, we have to have something to hold on to, right? We're trying to, some days are so hard just to get our feet out of the ground when it's the Groundhog Day effect right now, and it's hope. And if that's what's giving you hope, then belt it out, Meredith, belt it out. But that's what I really encourage people. It's, we always get the question, what is one song? There's no one song, there's no magic pill, but what there is there's the one song for you. Whatever's coming up in your brain, whatever jingle keeps coming back up, whatever song that's popping up, there's a reason for it. And it's okay. You don't have to go, oh, it says to listen to, this type of music. It's whatever is familiar to you. But always think, when you're stressed, it's harder to think, okay, what's the best music for stress? It's, just start putting playlist on, and then you'll know when it connects, and then it can help bring you down.
It totally does. And I'm going to get to another question. I just want everybody to know that the Boston Globe has a Spotify page. And at the end of this, when you go to it, I've asked some of the more familiar writers at the Globe, including Dan Shaughnessy, our business reporter, Janelle Nanos, myself, Mark Shanahan, Janae Osterfeld, a bunch of people have put together their own quarantine playlists. And Joy has said that she will send me her own, which I'm sure will have some Linkin Park on it. And so at the end of this, I highly recommend you get, there will be some Richard Marx on mine, I'm just letting you know. But now I want to get to some questions, and just a reminder that you can use that Q&A button at the bottom. So Marianne asks, I am really missing my community chorus. Do you have any suggestions that come close to that transcending experience?
I love that question, because it reminds us, okay, so one of the great things about when we are in a group singing, or if we're in a live concert, and why live concerts and those community things, is that you have that energy with each other, and you do feel that. And I think a lot of people are seeing right now, if you're on social media, some of the great choirs that are putting together compilations, and you're like, great, I can do this. And then you try to do it, and you have to remember that the ones that are coming out, and Boston Conservatory and Berklee released an amazing one, different voices from all over the world, but there's a lot of editing that goes into that to bring in those voices. So you're not going to get something perfect there. And I bring that up because take that expectation out so you're not disappointed. But what you can do to get that same transcendence, it's never going to match it. But there are ways that you can record, in terms of, if Meredith and I were singing together, if we're trying to do it live, unless we both have equal broadband, it's going to be, there's delays, there's difficulties. But Meredith can record her part, and while I have her part on, I can sing my part on top of that. And if you do that in a way, like say if you're I'm just going to use 4-part harmony, for example, because you'll see that in choirs, the bass, the tenor, the alto, the soprano. Each person is recording their part, and you can play it and go on top of it. So it's not going to be that same transcendence, but it's something better than nothing, right? But it's that recording of, versus in real time, if real time is becoming problematic, it's a way to add on that layering and have some of that same effect where you're still feeling that you're with someone, and doing the same thing and playing around with that.
We have a question also that came in separately, and I have this question too, because I mentioned my dad is playing the sax, and I have a keyboard, and my sister sings, and we were going to try to put something together. But are there? This might be something you have to look into, but what programs are good for this? Because we are really not great with computers. So like, I know I have like GarageBand on my laptop, but I don't even know what it does. So
GarageBand is great, but
it is okay.
but there is also user friendliness, right? So for someone who has a background in music, it might be very easy for them to use GarageBand. But what if it's okay with you? What we can do, we have a class within the music therapy department called Technology for Music Therapy, and our students and the professor Michael Moyes have put together a whole resource list of different apps that they've reviewed.
Okay.
And so it's not perfect, but what they did is they reviewed them so that you could see the benefits are worth, and you can kind of play around with them, and it includes their prices, the apps, what they found were helpful or not. And I'm happy to share that with people.
I would love that.
I think it's a great resource, and it all depends on, some people, TikTok, it's been great for some people to do things. GarageBand, if you have Apple, the QuickTime Movie, but there's also things that you can do on your phone. But I think to me, GarageBand is pretty easy, but for other people, it might be difficult. So it's start with, don't give yourself another thing to challenge, this whole thing about challenge yourself to do more and more and more, or, got to learn it, or this is the only possibility. Just start with, okay, we can each record a part, we can go there, or we could try and live and see how it works. But I think that list of apps that are available, and people can kind of see what works for them and makes sense for their situation and knowledge base, might be helpful instead of overwhelming.
That's great. If you send it to me,
okay.
For everybody who RSVP'd, I can send that out when we send the recording of this after, so you will get it. So Susanna asks, I'm a palliative care physician who works at a hospital. Fear and isolation compound the suffering hospitalized patients experience right now, families too. How can we better use music to overcome this isolation?
And I love this question. Absolutely love it, because I think a lot of us, what we're struggling with now is the isolation and not feeling connected. And feeling connected makes a big, big difference. So, a lot of our my colleagues in hospices here in Massachusetts and throughout the country, what they're doing is really encouraging people to not be afraid to share, first of all, music that we tend to know that music around adolescence tends to be most pivotal in people's memories in terms of significant life experiences, and there are moments in their life that were significant, whether it's a new job, new baby, they're moving, family, whatever it is. So in feeling connected in this sense, even if as a family member, and there's a loved one that you can't see right now because of the restrictions being placed on, is there a way that you can when if you're able to talk with them on the phone, share the music with them on the phone and talk about the memories associated with it is very instrumental. If that's not possible, can you ask nurses or other people that are there to say, hey, here's some music that I know, us remember listening together or had significant moments with us, that they can share that. So it's almost like you're sharing and gifting, like, hey, remember when we were doing this, and here's the music that's connected with it. Now, don't forget the significance of even soundtracks from movies. If you think about Forrest Gump and you hear the beginning of that with, remember the feather sing, the feather falling from the air, that can jog memories that, hey, I remember that, and I remember sharing that time with you, so that you're feeling connected in a different way and you're sharing memories, and that's important. The other way that you can really help within these situations is what we call giving gifts of songs, like, hey, Meredith, this song reminds me of you because it captures your personality or what you mean in my life. And so it might not be a song that was associated with our memory, but hey, I want you to listen to this because this made me think of you today. And what a way to, I can't be there in person, but here's something I want to give it to you.
Right at the start of this, my friend Sarah made me a playlist, and it was wonderful. And actually, it had the Batman theme on it. So you're right. That's sort of it's like makes you feel a lot more powerful if you're standing in a room with
Yeah.
So
no, and it's a great gift. And then if you're getting really creative. If you, say for an example, it's your mom, your grandmom, or real significant one, and you have little kids, you could even, hey, something as simple as "You Are My Sunshine," and change the words, and have the kids, put a memory in of this person or something that you're looking forward to doing down the road, and you can just change those lyrics up, make them jingle fun, but that you're involving people and you're putting in a different way of remembering things, but also it's that hope aspect and that connection, like, hey, someone's thinking of me, and that's a big deal. And sometimes we just need to know, hey, someone thought about me today. And that's nice. Last thing I was going to say with that is the other thing that you can do is, within those units, and don't be afraid for the staff to share their songs with residents or patients in nursing homes or in hospice facilities, and vice versa. Say, hey, Tom down the hallway played this song. Do you remember this song? Did you ever listen to this type of music? Because it's a way of having them connected within that facility or within that unit or with each other, and not just the family and loved ones, but also the staff and other residents.
That's a great idea. Jen asks, many teens are managing anxiety and sadness at home with physical school canceled for the year and sports and social milestones like graduation and proms taken from them. Is there music you would recommend to teens to help them manage anxiety and grief?
Meredith knows right before this, I have two teenagers. I have a 15 and a 16-year-old, and we're dealing with some of the same struggles. I'm always going to go back to what is familiar with them, but then don't be afraid to say, okay, you're doing a lot of this, and that tells me this, but how can we bring that down? Is there a different way that we can use the music? But also remember the different ways that music can be used. So a lot of times, we always think about it, decreasing stress, but maybe what we need to do is use that music and say, hey, let's get some of that angst out. We're going to dance, or we're going to, 10 push-ups or whatever it is. And I know teens are hard, trust me, I have them. But a way that, sometimes we always think about how do we decrease stress is we automatically think, okay, we want them to meditate, and most of them are not there. It's okay, let's start with that activation again, get some of that angst out physically, and then start bringing them down that way. Other things that you can do is really encourage them to connect with their friends in different ways. And again, it could be simple, silly things like, hey, you send them a new song of the day, or you do this. There are also opportunities to put, if there's access to instruments at home, it's an opportunity, like if there's been a guitar that's sitting collecting dust in the corner, or a keyboard, or you can actually get online apps too that you can create music. And that's a new way of, the whole point is to disrupt the current pattern from what's currently happening that's being ineffective, and what are new alternatives. And there's not one thing, but you can try different things. And, whether it's, instead of using the music to calm down, maybe it's to match them and get physical activity, or if it's to help them express something, before they go to bed. But also if there's an instrument that's being dusted in the corner, or again, the way that they can create, I know a lot of them are into TikToks and creating TikToks, there's a different way that you can use it and focus in on it, and give them that opportunity. But the other big thing with the anxiety is give them the opportunity to grieve. This sucks. And so everyone's trying to put on the brave face, but maybe they just need a moment to have the music to acknowledge that it sucks, and the grieving process that goes along with that, particularly when it comes to their friends and their sports and their routine. As much as them might say that they hate school, there was that social element to it, and there was that predictability to it, and that's important as well. I hope it's not an answer. It's not. There's no way to rescue. It's trying all different.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I think also it's so revealing what you say about the music we love being tied to our adolescence, because it just goes to show you how important it is and how terrible it is that teens are missing out on so much right now. Like, one thing I noticed with the Globe people giving me their, mixtapes essentially, is that it sort of stops. You can kind of tell when they stop developing. Like, even for me, it's like, it goes from like Pointer Sisters to like the Lilith Fair, and then sort of like maybe there's a little more after that, but like Mark Shanahan was the only person who seemed to have contemporary music taste blended in. And I think, he's influenced by his children, and there's Lana Del Rey and there's Frank Ocean, and I was really impressed, but it's like we stop at some point. But it just goes to show you that these teens who are feeling the loss, it's because all of this is so important right now. And I also wonder, like, if there's something to I'm sure there are a lot of grown, adult parent people who want to voice their music on their children when in fact perhaps what's more empathetic is
listening to where they are.
Yeah, listening to where they are. Like me figuring out, I mean, I don't have kids, but like figuring out who some of these newer contemporary people really are. Like I accept like 5 new people into my life every year in music. That's about it, and probably a lot more. So anyway, that's really interesting. But
it's another way to feel connected too. So right. So we get a lot of, my God, what is my teen listening to? And trust me, some of the stuff my one child listens to, how does that connect to your life? Right? But it's like what you said, what I'm listening to from that song might be totally something different. So when I hear it, I'm hearing these words and these graphic images, so it's so funny because when I said to my daughter, like, tell me, how does that connect to where you are? That's not your life experience. And she's like, you listen to the rhythm. I don't know what you're talking about. She was oblivious to the lyrics. She was listening to the rhythm because the rhythm was really driving her. And so to your point, Meredith, it's a way to say, okay, you know what, instead of me fighting this, tell me what's about it. And then it spurs conversations into different paths. And keep in mind with the teens, they'll talk when they're ready to talk. So you might want to have that conversation right now. They're going to want to have it in the middle of the night. At least mine do, when I'm sleeping. But the point being is, it's that, hey, these are the really big artists now. And, even if it's, hey, this was a big artist back then, and this was our thing. And, whether they listen to it or not, you're opening a door for a different conversation and a different way to see each other in a way. One more thing real quick though, I was going to say the other thing that we forget about is even just doing art to music. It's a different experience in terms of, instead of listening and meditating, particularly if you're a more physical person, even, if you have markers or crayons, pastels are great, and watercolors are great and it's not about this pretty piece of art, it's just where you are.
We have a question about how does the volume of music affect our mood, which I think is such a great question because sometimes I had a test years ago at my ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he told me that everyone right at my age has lost their hearing at the same pitch because of Walkmans. So I feel like that's why I just have to keep turning it up louder and louder, because I did this to myself. But does louder music inspire us in a different way?
I think some of us, again, and it goes back to where we feel like we're really being heard, right? Not heard as in my like I'm feeling it in my body. And so there is something, like when you're turning up music, you start to feel the vibrations because the speakers are vibrating, right? And so you're starting to feel that. And it's part of the reason why we like to go to live concerts. We can feel that energy, and that energy you feel it in your body, and you can't replicate that the same as when you're not, even through, you can have the best Bose speakers, but it's not the same replication of all that energy and that vibrations in your body. So in terms of, I'm horrible, so no one listens to my advice, I blast music in my ears all the time because I feel there's something about when I feel it, then I can let it go. Now, do I blast calming music? No, but my angst music, I blast because I need to like have that validation in my body that I'm angst, and then I can start bringing it down. And it's also a way of blocking out the world. And I just need to be in this moment. I can't explain it. I don't want to talk about it. I just need to feel the validation from, whether it's my auditory, emotional, whatever it is, and then I can bring it down. So we don't have enough research in terms of volume, other than we know it can cause hearing loss, right? But in terms of what, decibels are better and whatnot. And we also don't have enough on frequency, because that's the other thing that we're talking about is the frequencies. And you also know that there's certain, if you're a musician or, even an amateur musician, there's certain sounds in terms of chordal structures or tones that you're really drawn to. And so, when you play it, you're like, that resonates with me, or that instrument really resonates with me because there's something about it that we just can't explain. And we can do an experiment with, even tone chimes, where we have people in different parts of the room, or just say, play until you find the one that really resonates with you. And it's going to be different for different people. So, if you're listening to a song, it might be even a chordal passage that just really hits you. And we don't have enough research and science behind that. We just know. We just know that's it.
Do you have instruments that or sort of your happy instruments to hear?
Oh my God, yeah. The cello, there is something about the cello that just hits me right here, and I can't explain it other than I can feel it, right? And I can also tell you, like the C to an E minor chord, like E minor chord or an E minor seventh chord, just there's something about it. When I hear it, I know it. And the reason I know it's an E minor 7 chord is because, I'm a musician, but like for other people, it's just, I hear this and there's something about it and I can't explain it, but we don't have enough research on that. What we do know is that the blasting the music is not good for you in terms of your hearing, right? But, in terms of, what I'm talking about in terms of, when it's louder, does it activate a different part of the brain? We haven't seen that. We've seen that music activates different parts of the brains, and that's why it's effective on different areas, right? But we don't know why, the quote unquote exact science between why when we really need that, when we hear it really, really loud, why it helps us get back down to where we need to be. We don't have enough on it.
That's interesting. Sandra asks, and this is related to all of these questions, thinking about music, my college children are now at home, and I can often hear their music playing loudly at times from different parts of the house. It is so hard to listen to music that I do not want to hear, but I'm also not one to work with headphones on. I'm trying to give them space to be themselves, but it's a struggle. Thoughts about tolerating music that doesn't sing to you?
Totally hear you there. And I think this goes back to, even what we were talking about earlier and what works and what doesn't work. And again, trying to put something on because it works for you doesn't work for someone else when you're trying to have effects, right? That's why it's so important, those individual differences. There's eventually when you hear the same stuff, you block it out and you tune it out, right? But it also might be, the only thing that your options really are is having those conversations of different times or different things. And you want to blast that's great. I'm trying to provide you that space. But these are like the non-musical negotiations in a house that there's really not much we can do. Like, if Meredith and her colleagues from the Boston Globe were in my space, it's okay. How do we make the best of this? Right. Can they put headphones on, or at least put headphones on from, this hour to this hour, I claim this, and having those negotiations within that. So it's not really so much the only way that we learn to tolerate, of course, familiarity, but then familiarity has two things. You're either having that conditioned response of every time I hear this song, I do X, or it's, I can tune it out and I can block it out. Not much more that we can do other than that.
I know that headphones have also evolved where there are probably some pretty amazing noise canceling headphones that might be more comfortable. It's funny you say that because I growing up in a house with a piano teacher who taught all day and all night.
Oh my gosh.
My friends would be over and they would say like, oh, like this doesn't bother you. And I would be like, what? I don't even hear it.
Yeah.
So, well, and it over time.
Well, and it's the same thing because we take that same principle when we have individuals, sometimes when we have individuals that we know music can be helpful, whether it's, they have dementia or they're sedated or what have you. And we just put music on all day. Oh my gosh, you're going to lose any effect you have because over time you tune out. So it's that same thing. Would you want to hear something in your ear all day? Or do you say, okay, let's have listening time, right? Or listening things because you tune it out otherwise. So that same concept works both ways of overstimulating versus understimulating. I hope that makes sense.
We have a question from Deborah. How about the response of animals to music? I had a cat that would immediately calm down when I played Mozart's clarinet concerto, and I think
Hey, which was, by the way, one of my favorites.
okay,
Mozart's clarinet. Yeah.
Cat's got good taste.
Uh-huh.
So what do we know much about animals and music?
No, other than we know frequencies and pitches, right? So we know dogs react to higher pitches, and we have to watch that. We also have seen the videos where a kid will be practicing, said instrument, and the animal is howling or covering up their head.
Right.
We don't know enough, but we know that hearing is sensitive and they react to different ways, and so it's keeping that in mind, just like any other sound. And we've seen videos where dogs are playing along with the piano, or dogs are trying to close the piano on you. It's all with frequencies, and there might be some research out there. I just don't know of any that is other than anecdotal information, and of course the sound frequencies with the higher pitches with certain animals.
Nancy asks, what's the truth about listening to binaural beats? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, and so what you have is you'll have and this comes into sound frequencies and sound healing. And so what we're seeing is that there's certain beats per minute, because if you think about your heart rate, it's beats per minute, and there's a normal range, right? And then when you're elevated or de-elevated, like at night, you have your resting heart rate versus if you're in your cardio peak zone. And so with the binaural beats and what have you, it's really looking at, okay, the combination of beats per minute as well as the frequency of those beats. Does it have an impact? In other words, we're just starting to see some research being done in terms of, is there certain frequencies that activate different parts of the brain? So for example, with someone with depression, is there certain sound frequencies that would help activate those parts of the brain that are been deactivated because, or less active because of the condition that they are in? And so we don't have enough research right now. It's things that we're looking at. If we did this type of frequencies, would that impact or help, with the neuroplasticity in the brain to help with that particular condition? And so is there, it's right now, it's all experimental. You will see a lot, even if you go on Spotify right now, you'll see playlists geared towards that. And again, it may work for some people, it may not. And we just don't have enough research, is what it comes down to.
Okay. This next question relates to the cat question. It's from a different reader who asks, is there any special helpfulness to listening to Mozart's music?
Yeah, so we know the big book, the Mozart effect, right? And so again, it's all coming back down to preference and what works. We know in certain situations and controlled situations that certain types of music do help. But I think the bigger thing to look at is the characteristics of that music and what it brings, as well as the familiarity with that music. If you have someone from a different culture who's never listened to Mozart, is it really going to have the same effect, right? We don't know. What we do know is that, if we're trying to affect concentration or stress levels, is that having something, closer to the natural heartbeat, between that 60 and 80 beats per minute, something that is, flowing melodic lines, which Mozart was known for, the flowing melodic lines, that there's some level of predictability, and there's not a lot of rhythmic inconsistency and syncopation, where it's something that we can naturally get into a flow and listen to. That's what's helpful. So it's more of that the characteristics of the music versus a particular composer or piece. And then the other thing that we know in terms of that response is, the dynamics. Are they consistent? Is it simple harmonies that tend to be more major scales? Is the rhythm the steady flowing rhythm? Is the tones and the timbre of the music? Is there a lot of strings? We know that strings, particularly within the alto range, are very helpful. They're soft, they're soothing. So it's more of the characteristics than a particular piece of music or composer. If you compare, Mozart to, Shostakovich, you can see automatically the differences in the music. To Beethoven's Ninth, da 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 da, you're gonna get. But again, it's more of the characteristics. But composers wrote in different styles, and that's why you see, things like the Mozart effect.
Okay. Tom asks a question. This is very similar to a different question, but it's he belongs to Sangerfest Men's Chorus. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is the question where he says they used to practice every Monday, and now they meet on Zoom. And he's complaining about the delays, but it sounds like we're going to get a list of ways to perhaps do that. But
and it's, again, we just don't have enough technology within the broadband right now. But what I will say is that I think once we get over that, we're not going to have what was in terms of that perfect choir experience, but this is what we can do in the meantime. Yeah. It gives us what we can control, right?
Is there anything about, one thing I've noticed, and I didn't put any live music on my playlist, but I like listening to live music right now because like recordings of live music, because you hear the crowd go, and I wonder if some of these people who are used to choral ensemble practice or music ensemble, if there are live recordings of what they're trying to do, like just singing along with a live recording, like if you can
energy,
you fake out yourself a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you. Some people love live recordings because you feel like you're part of that experience, right? Because you hear, there's like imperfections in it too, right? Where other people prefer the studio recording where everything, there's no, the sound is perfect, the balance between the different instruments and the voice is perfect, so on and so forth. But the live one, other than, you're hearing the audience and the cheering with it, but for a lot of people too, I'm in that moment with these people. So exactly what you had said in terms of, is there live recordings of even some of the practices that they did that you can help feel more connected? But I think one of the things that we're really missing within that connection is being in the same room. It's a different energy. So even like you and me talking, if we were in a room together, it's different. We can see, the energy is different, and we feed off of that. We can't have it right now, but how are different ways that we can connect? And, the closest that I have found, and I'm sure we could get people who could give us different suggestions too, other than the apps, is that building off of send me, your part, I can sing on top of it. So it's almost like that karaoke minus in a way, right? That we're taking away different parts, but we're adding in the part that is ours to try to recreate something.
Shirley asks, when music makes me cry, I get even more sad. Should I not listen? And this goes to some of the previous Taking Care installments we've had about feeling feelings, where I personally, according to my therapist, am uncomfortable feeling feelings. So I never know how long I'm supposed to feel them, or when you feel a moment of sadness, or perhaps music brings that on, if that's like a healthy process, or if you should quickly turn it off. I think it's like really.
And I think to me, it's about the balance. So if you're finding yourself being stuck in those moments and then having that conditioned response where you're just listening over and over to have those, it's one thing to validate, right? And say, like, I'm going to use the example, and don't judge. I'm just going to share my own personal life here. So, on one day this week, it might have been Sunday or Monday, I was having a really hard time. Like this, we all are. And there's a song from the soundtrack City of Angels, Peter Gabriel, I Grieve. And there's something about it. I just needed to cry. And when we're trying to keep it all together for everybody else, I just needed a moment. So I'm aimlessly walking around Newton, crying as I'm listening to I Grieve by Peter Gabriel. And then just having that moment of being able to release it, then I could build up from that. But if I sit there in those moments, it then becomes that pattern of that's not allowing me to get where I need right now. So it's all about how you need to disrupt that pattern. And so if it serves a point, but if it's coming to the point where it's serving it in a not so good way, it's not so good. So what I would encourage is really look at, okay, do I just need that moment to cry, or do I just need that moment to let it out so I can go back into my house and take care of what needs to be the people in my house, which is what I needed, versus, like you said, I don't like feelings. Everything's great. I just keep going, right? So how it's serving there. So if there's particular music that's every time you're listening to it, you cry, ask yourself, what is it providing right now? Is that what you need, or do you need to be here? Do I need to be more motivated? Do I need to, feel hope? Do I need to feel connected to something different? And then change the music into that. So even starting there and changing into the music serving a different purpose and what that music might be.
I've been very grateful for Peter Gabriel in the last few weeks, because that's an artist where the range is pretty big. And I have one of his songs, Secret World, on the playlist, but I also, just in a totally flipped kind of mood, his recordings of In Your Eyes that are live are so long that if I can work out, if I can do sit-ups, force myself to do sit-ups, that's how I time myself. If I can make it through an entire Peter Gabriel In Your Eyes, because he won't stop. It's just now the drum solo, and now.
No, I'm dying here, because when I'm doing my sit-ups, I need something that is driving,
Well, I just know, Peter Gabriel is not, when he does In Your Eyes, he's just going to make it 1 minute longer and 2 minutes longer. And for me, it's the psychology of if he's going to continue his biggest hit forever, if I can get through it, then I've made a massive accomplishment. But then separately, that's an artist who has, the song you mentioned is beautiful, and all these sort of, very gorgeous, thoughtful songs, but then also Sledgehammer, which is a great, every teenager is I don't, but I will say younger people, there's a great Harry Styles cover of Sledgehammer that came out a few weeks ago, where I was yes, let's bring that song to another generation. So, I love
and that also brings up another thing, people don't be afraid to listen to different versions or different mixes of different songs, because In Your Eyes that way does nothing for me. Sorry, Meredith.
It's okay. It's at this point, it's like that music you've heard so much that you can't hear it. It's a little bit.
But it's serving as a timekeeper for you, and that's your motivation. It's a timekeeper, and sometimes the music is a timekeeper. Sometimes it's an emotional outlet. Sometimes it's that motivational beat. Sometimes it's I feel closer to my sister.
I'm not going to name the person who sent in this letter, so I can keep her secret, but I'd like to reframe my 17-year-old's spontaneous bursts of strained singing of a refrain or other part of a song into a more organized musical for us to do. Her sudden near screeches, very loud and off, are becoming untenable. She has a really pretty voice when actual singing is her goal. How can I turn this into a positive one-to-one activity with her? I sing too. She is not into any sound therapy drama activities. Thanks. I wish I know what the song was.
All I can think about is the Taylor Swift song with the goat that they were doing the.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're protecting identity. And I apologize for laughing. I think what it comes down to is again, what purpose is it serving her, right? To screech that at the top. What need is that fulfilling for her right now? Is she just trying to get something out? How many of us have belted in the car or belted in the shower? Okay, whatever need that's serving, let's try to make it something different. Sometimes it's, there's a couple different things I'm thinking about with this. Is even, if you're singing too high, you're going to screech, right? But if you lower, sing it in a different key, it's different. It's easy for us musicians to transpose into different keys, but what you can do is just, particularly because you said you were a vocalist, is to sing it lower so it's not screeching. But then again, it's that opening that moment to, okay, daughter, this seems to really help you, and how can you, what need is that fulfilling, and how do I fulfill it in a different way? Or vice versa. It's, what other music, or you, in this case, she particularly talked about musicals, have those moments where it's just that screech, and then let's start working from there. So it's that matching, it's that ISO principle. What need is it fulfilling, and how do I start there and bring it down? And if she has and don't be afraid to say, hey, I see that you're doing this. Here's something that reminds me of that. Hey, can we try that? Or, and teens are difficult because it has to be their idea. You can't do it. You have to like slowly introduce it around the back door. They have to come up with it, but just even leaving those little nuggets like, hey, this reminded me of, in this particular music, this is their screech moment. And let's go from there.
Jen asks, I am the social worker for a 62 plus apartment building. We had a music therapist who came in weekly. Now that everyone's staying inside their apartments on their own, how can I bring the music to them, especially those who do not have computers?
Awesome question. So there's, if they have a phone, obviously that's an easy thing to do. But the other thing to do is there are ways that, again, if they're not coming out in groups like they used to have, in the common areas within, is there ways that I can even outside the door or have a door open where they can start listening to things or recreating some of those experiences? Or is there alternative ways that we can share, short playlists or musical moments? And if that's not the case, is there ways that we can get them talking about music? Music appreciation, like what were some of the songs from your childhood that were really important to you? I'm going to share that, and then we can come up with even, a list that, and this particular hallway or odd number apartments, these were the pertinent songs here. Or how did, what were our songs from, our wedding, our where we grew up? What are some of the popular things that were happening back then? So it becomes more of, instead of listening, it becomes more of a discussion. Even though they're in their separate places, it's something someone can engage them in one-on-one, but that they're still feeling connected even though they're apart. And that's the big key, is how do we feel connected when we're apart? What are different ways that we can do that? We can't all be in the same space anymore, but can we engage in a different way through still using the music as the impetus of it, but in a different way?
Is there anything that we know about music with lyrics versus music without? When we talk about film scores or classical music that has no vocals, it made me think a little bit about how, even when I'm writing for the Globe, it's harder for me to write with lyrics. I try writing an advice column. I always say this: I don't answer any of the letters with music on because the music influences my advice too much. If I'm listening to a sad song, I feel worse about the person's relationship than I should. And if it's like happy and upbeat, I'm like, it's fine. So, if I'm writing something else, I'm more actually, one thing that's been great is the Little Women, the score to the most recent Little Women.
Yeah.
Great for writing. I highly recommend it. So, and upbeat, a lot of it. And, but what do we know about that and our brains?
So it's again how people are connecting with it. So sometimes I listen to the lyrics, sometimes I don't, and sometimes it's the combination of it. So again, it's I hate to keep saying this to everyone, and I apologize, but there is no one answer, and it's just you being aware of how you're using it. So sometimes within the lyrics, there's something in particular that they're saying. But the beautiful thing about musicians when they're writing this music is that it's not just the lyrics or just the melody line. It's the package. Sorry, dropping my pen. It's the package. And so, when an artist is writing, they're in a particular place and they're presenting that like you do with your columns, versus when someone's receiving it, it's where they are in their own place at that time on how they receive it. So, we talked about I'm Not Okay by My Chemical Romance, and it's saying I'm not okay, but the music is really driving and upbeat. And so there seems to be this incongruence, but it's where they are, like, I'm not okay, right? I'm not okay. And it switches to I am okay, but the music is still, it's how you're taking that in. And for some people, they might just be, I'm not okay, but you're still movement. There's still life there. You're still beating. And so the not okay is in a different perspective. And so, in some cases, the lyrics can become a distraction because you're what you're perceiving. In other cases, it can really bring in the whole package because it's putting words to feelings that you cannot express at the time. And so we don't know, like I know that there are times where I will not use lyrics whatsoever because I want the person I want it to be their experience, not words that someone else is putting on them. But again, I think what's more important is to look at what is it that I'm in tune to? And it goes back to the example I said with my daughter. When I listened to the lyrics of her song, I was like, what is that? And she was oblivious to the lyrics. To her, it was all about the beat behind it and the way that the beat was interacting, the different beats were interacting with one another. So I think it's always where that congruence or incongruence is. And we pick up on that, and as music therapists, when we're doing a song discussion or a lyric analysis with a group or clients, it's tell me what you hear in the music without the words. All right, now tell me what words stick out to you. Does that match here or not? And that tells me where you are and where your incongruence in your life right now that's preventing you from moving forward.
I know we have to close out soon, but I wonder what music we listen to now will remind us of and what it will make us think of when we are on the other side of this. And hopefully we will all be healthy and on the other side of this. There are certain songs I can never listen to again because they remind me of terrible moments or songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wonder sort of, I guess this is my way of saying I hope I'm not ruining Richard Marx for myself. Like what will these songs trigger for us later, and how does that work?
Yeah, and I think it's all on how we were using it. So for some people, if I'm having if I got bad news on a particular day, and that was the song that was in the mind, I'm probably not going to that's going to be my association with it, whether it was a good song or bad, or if it was a good piece of music or not. But there might be other positive things. Like if we think about, the number of musicians who are providing concerts right now and really connecting to us. And that might be, hey, you know what, this really sucked, but, the concert with Lady Gaga was phenomenal in some of the intimacy and vulnerability. So, I think it's the same with life in general. Whenever there's a crisis, it's, what's building us up, what's going to help us rise up, what's going to help us cope through this. And those things that really helped us cope are going to be the ones that we're really going to go back to in life, and that familiarity with coping. Those things that just, for whatever reason, it's not because it's a bad piece of music or a bad artist, that, were the ones that were really difficultly hard for us and triggering in a way. We're not going to want to hear them because they're going to re-trigger us.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for talking us through this, and I'm going to think so much more about the playlists I make and how I can help myself feel better with different songs. And I hope everybody goes to that Boston Globe Spotify section, and I will also put a link to it in the dispatch we send out after this, as well as all of the tips that Joy is going to give us about how we can record ourselves.
Absolutely. And yeah. And I was going to say, don't be afraid to share with one another. Like, what a great way to feel connected is, just saying, hey, hey, friend, listen to this. Or, hey, mom, this reminded me of you. Or, hey, remember when we did this? Because I think we all need connection right now. And it's a way that we can be connected when we physically cannot be connected. And that could make someone's day and make a big difference.
Yeah, and for all of you sports fans, although I'm wondering about the middle of the Venn diagram of the sports fans who are also desperate to know about, and but you will now have Dan Shaughnessy's playlist, and guess what? It's not going to surprise you at all.
Just think about how this has given us a different way to look at things, right? Like, I can't wait to see these too.
Yeah. So thank you so much, and everybody, I'll see you next week, and have a good, safe, healthy weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.